Hello everyone, in this video we are going to learn about Blazor components and data binding. This is the second video of a series of videos that I'm planning to do on Blazor, WebAssembly and Blazor server. And in this video we are going to understand what Blazor components are, and then we are going to create our first Blazor component, and then we are going to see how you can input values to components and how you can get outputs, the events from the component. And then we are going to learn about essentials on component lifecycle. In this video, I'm not going to dive deeper into component lifecycle because you don't need to know everything to get started. The whole idea of this series, at least from the beginning, is to get you started using Blazor. And finally, we are going to see how one-way and two-way data binding works, and also event bindings and lambda expressions. In our last video, we developed a sample application. We hosted that on Azure as well. If you haven't seen that video, you can watch that as well. As you can see on the left, we have the application that we have deployed in our last video. It is a simple standard Blazor template. We have added one button and one event to that application. In this video, we are going to learn about components and data bindings by improving this application to look like this application. Here we have two pages, one for listing the courses that you can follow, and when you click on each of these courses there will be a new, let me maximize this. When you click on these courses there will be another page that contains more information of that course, and as you can see on the left we have a list of articles and some course description, and you can add comments as well. Along the way we are going to develop this application and we are going to know more about Blazor. So let's get started. This is the application that we have started to develop in our last video. As you can see, we have three pages, the default template pages, and we have changed this index.razor file in our last video. Let me run this application so that we see the changes as we change the code in Visual Studio. Let me do that now. Alright, on the left we have our application and on the right we have Visual Studio. Now we need to have a page that lists the courses. For that I'm going to create a new Razor component. I can right click on pages and I can add a new Razor component. Not a Razor page, this is for ASP.NET, a Razor component. And in this page here we have Razor components. I'm going to name it courses. Alright, as you can see I have just added our first component. And when it comes to component naming conventions, just like every Microsoft product, the file name starts with a capital letter, as you can see, and also you can create folder structures as well to organize your components like this. For example, I'm going to create a new folder here called courses, and then I can just move it like this, as you can see. Alright, now I'm in courses page. Now let's say you want your users to see this page. What you can do is you can add a route. This is how we do it. As you can see, this will mark the page as a routable component. Let me add something like this, courses, and then I'm going to save it. And it is asking me whether I want to rebuild and apply changes because the application is already running. Alright, now if I go into courses, as you can see, we can see the page that we have just created. But when I click on home, I'm going back to the index page. I want this courses page to be my main page that lists the courses. How can I do that? Now if I go into index.razor file, we have the page as the root. I'm going to delete this index like this, and I'm going into courses, and then I'm going to change the page to direct to the root. Let me run it again. Alright, as you can see, I can see my courses page when I click home on the root of my application. As you saw earlier, the courses were tiles. We can think of each of those tiles as components, and then we can reuse them. If you're familiar with Angular or React, it is the same concept here as well. Now let me create a new component here. Remember, this is a routable component. I can just change this route here and I can access the component directly. But the next component that I'm going to create now, it's not going to be a routable component. It is a tile that displays the information about our courses. Now let me add a new Razor component. I'm going to call it course item. Let's say I'm adding it now. Now if I go into courses, I can directly reference this course item component. Let me show you that. As you can see, with IntelliSense, I can reference it. And when I save the file, we can see that the course item is displayed here as well. Now let me add few things here. As you can see, we can reuse this course item component. This is just a simple text. Now let me make this a tile. And that tile contained the name of the course and a description. You can think of these Blazor components as a C# class. It's going to be a C# class, and the tile contained the name of the course and a description. Because of that, I'm going to create two variables to store the name and the description of the course. Let me do that now. It is a string, and let me call it name, and the next one is description. And also these courses, they should have some kind of an ID, right? Let me add that as well. I'm going to call it reference ID. Alright, as you can see, we have defined 3 properties inside of the component. Now, if I want to show the name and the description of the course, I can just add the name like this, and I want to show the description as well. I can show the description like this. Now let me save it. As you can see, this got updated, and now I want to change the name of the course and the description from the parent component. This is the parent component that has all, and this is the parent component that has 4 courses. Can I set them like this? I can pass the name and course 1. I'm going to save it, and when I do that, nothing happened. If we inspect the console of my application, we can see that I'm passing in name parameter, but I haven't added parameter attribute to the property. So I'm going back to my course item. Let me add parameter here. This parameter here will tell Blazor framework that this course item component is expecting this property to be set by its parent. Now let me save it. As you can see, the course 1 just got updated. Let me add this parameter to all 3 properties of my course item. Alright, now since I'm creating a courses application, other than keeping these properties one by one, it is easier if I can create a class that contains all these properties that I need in a course. Because of that, I'm going into my courses app, and then I'm going to add a new folder. Let me call it data. This could be another class library as well, but for this video, this is good enough. I'm going to create a new class, and then I'm going to add 4 properties like this: reference ID, name, description, and an image. Now let me save it. Alright, and now I'm going into courses component, and this should have a list of courses. Let me define that now. Something like this. Let's say I want to initialize this list of courses here when this component gets initialized. For that, I can override uninitialized lifecycle component of Blazor. Let me do that now. Now if I type override here, as you can see, we have a list of methods that we can override. I'm going to go with uninitialized, and then I'm going to add a loop like this that will add few dummy data to this courses list. Let me save this one as well. Alright, now we have a list of courses, and now I want to display the courses that we have in this list on the UI. For that, I can use a Blazor for each like this. It's going to be a course in courses list, and then I can add courses item inside of the for each loop. Let me save it now. Let's see what happens. As you can see, we have a list of courses now. I can pass in the actual course name here like this. As you can see, just got updated. Now I'm going to pass in the description as well. As you can see, I'm getting IntelliSense because we have marked this property with parameter attribute. Now let me add the description as well, and finally the reference ID as well. Let me save it now. As you can see, we have the list of courses with the description as well. Now we have the list of courses, but it looks a bit dull because it's just a list. Let's apply some styles and make this a tile. I'm going into Solution Explorer, and here we have the course item.blazor file. You can add a CSS file for this course item by right clicking here and adding a new item, and I'm going to search for CSS. As you can see, we have style sheet. Now the naming convention matters here. We have to name it course item.razor.css. As you can see, when we name our files like that, Visual Studio will organize them hierarchically like this, and inside of the Razor file, we have the razor.css file. I have already written some HTML and CSS. Alright, as you can see, I have just added an image like this. I found this online, this image. It's a image from a blog, as you can see, and a h5 tag and a description. And it doesn't look right. Because of that, I'm going into the CSS of it, and then I'm going to add a style as well. Now it looks alright, but when I increase the size, it doesn't look right. That is because we still have to apply a few styles to our courses page here. Now I'm going into courses and I'm adding another CSS file. Alright, and here first I'm going to apply a media query, and then to the container of these courses I'm going to apply this grid based styling. Let me save it now. Alright, it doesn't work, and that is because I haven't added this class to this course item container. Now I'm going to do that. Alright, as you can see, we have a grid and it is responsive as well. Alright, now we learned how to create components. Here we have created this courses component and we have added a route as well, and also we have created another component, that is the course item component, and we saw how to input parameters to this component. Now let's see how to get output events from this component. For that, I'm going into course item.razor like this, and then I'm going to add these two buttons. Let me save this now. As you can see, we have two buttons on each of these courses. To show you how to get the events of these components to the parent component, first we should have an event handler inside of the main component. It is going to be another method like this. Alright, I can just console.write line and see whether this works. I have added a new method here and I'm going to save it. After that, I can add this event binding here. I can do that by adding an @ and invoking onClick. After that, I can specify the method that needs to be invoked when this button is clicked. Let me save it now. Alright. Now, if I look into the console, as you can see, if I clear this, when I click on these buttons, we can see the message. So this is how you can add event handlers to your HTML components. But this is not what we wanted to do. What we wanted to do is get the click event of this course item component to its parent courses component. For that, we can use something called EventCallbacks. Let me show you how to do that. We have to create an event callback like this. And if you're passing a value, if you're passing a parameter, let's say if you had a input field here, you can pass that parameter. That's why we have a generic type. Now I'm going to make this a string. Like this, we can specify this event callbacks. And after specifying this, you can invoke it. Let me do that now. You can do it like this. As you can see, we have two overloads. One doesn't have any inputs and the second one has a string, and that has a string because we have used this string generic type. I'm going to pass the reference ID of this course item component so that the parent component courses knows which like button got clicked. Let me add the reference ID. Alright, now I'm going to save it. Alright, now I'm going back to courses page. Now if you look here, we have three input parameters. We can add the output parameter as well. The name of the event callback that we have used is onLikeClicked. Now if I add on like clicked, I should get an IntelliSense here. I'm not getting it because I haven't marked this as a parameter. Let me mark this as a parameter like this, and then I'm going back to courses component. Let's try again. As you can see, we're getting it. Now there should be a method here in the parent component to bind to this onClicked event. I'm going to create that now. I'm going to add this input parameter reference ID because that is what I'm passing here. And then I'm going to store it in a variable here. It's going to be private string. I'm going to call it liked course ID like this. And then what I can do is I can store the course ID that user liked. I have created the method and the variable. Now I'm going here to add the event handler on course like clicked. Alright, now when the user clicks the like button, we are getting the course ID to its parent component. First, let me show you how it works. I'm going to add a p tag here and liked course ID. Alright, now I'm going to click here. As you can see, we're getting the ID of the course that user clicks. Showing the ID is not user friendly, and because of that, let me add something like this. Seems like you like this course ID. Now it looks better, but the course ID, that's not user friendly at all. We can read the actual course name from this courses list. For that, what I can do is I can do a inline lambda like this. I can just invoke courses list. I can get the first item, let's call it X, where X.reference ID is equal to liked course ID. As you can see, I can write lambda expressions in line. From this lambda expression, we are getting the course object that matches the one that user clicked. And since I want to display the name of the course, I can just access the name like this. Let me save it. As you can see, something went wrong. There should be an error because when this component gets initialized, it doesn't have liked course ID set. Because of that, we can add a condition. This is how you can add conditions with Blazor syntax. You can just check whether this is available or not. Only if it is available, we can show this message. I'm going to save this now. The app started working again. Now if I click on like here, as you can see, we are seeing the actual course name. Now we learned how to create components and how to pass in inputs to it and get output events from it. Let's see what happens if I click on these components. As you can see, I have added this image. I have wrapped that image in a href tag. If I click here, I'm getting this. Sorry, there's nothing at this address. That message is in app.razor file. As you can see, if the route is found, it will show the actual component. Otherwise, it will show this message. We are seeing this because we don't have a actual route and a component defined for this route here. I'm going back and I'm going into Solution Explorer, and now I'm going to define component that will show more information about the course. I'm going to create another folder for organization, add course here, and then I'm going to add a new Razor component. I'm going to call it course. Alright. First, let's add the route here. Basically, when the user clicks on these courses, if you look here in the course item component, I'm directing the user to the courses / the reference ID of the course. Now if I go back to the course.razor, I am defining the route like this, courses / ID inside of the curly braces. And that is because I want to read the actual URL parameter from this URL. Now I'm going to save it. Alright. Now if I click this, as you can see, I don't see that nothing to be found error message. I'm just seeing a new page. But there's an error, seems like. As you can see, I'm passing in the course ID, but I haven't specified a property, a parameter inside of this course component. What I can do is I can just define the parameter like this. And since it is a parameter, I can use parameter attribute like this. Now I'm going to save it. As you can see, the error went away and we can see the course component. And also we can read this ID that was passed here as well. Now if I add something like this, if I try to read it like this, let's see what happens. as you can see, course 0 is displayed. Now if I go back and click course 2, as you can see, course 2 is shown. Now this page looks dull, and because of that I have created this HTML. Let me add it now. Alright, and then I'm going to add a CSS as well. Let me add a new CSS file. Name is going to be course.razor.css. I have prepared this responsive CSS. I'm going to save it. As you can see, we have a little bit of organization. Now let me resize the page, and as you can see, we have a courses page. Now if I click here, we have an image and a description, and here we have a list of articles of that course. Let me resize this again. Now we are going to introduce a new feature to this course view. While introducing that new feature, we are going to learn about two-way data binding. The new feature that we're going to introduce here is adding comments to the courses. As you can see, we have a list of articles and we have a description, but we can't add comments. Because of that, I'm going to add maybe a HR here. I have prepared this HTML. Let me add that. Alright. As you can see, I have added this header, comments, and a text area, and 2 buttons and a list of comments like this. As you can see, our course page is starting to grow now. Now it's time for us to refactor this page. I'm going to move this comments section to another component. Let me do that now. Now I'm going to the Solution Explorer and course page, and here I'm going to add a new Razor component. Since these are articles, since I'm calling them articles, let me call this component article comment. Alright, and then I'm going to paste the HTML here. The name should be, I think, comments, since we have all the comments here. Alright, now I have moved the HTML to article comments component. Let me go back to the courses.razor and add article comments reference here. As you can see, we have refactored the HTML code. Now I'm going into article comments.razor file, and let's understand one-way and two-way data binding. I'm going to add a new HTML div tag here, and let's say when the user adds the comment, I want to do a preview of that comment. I'm going to change the name to you. As you can see, we have that here, and I'm going to remove this existing comment, and then I'm going to create a new variable here that is a string. I'm going to call it comment text, and then I'm going to display the comment text here. Now if I change the comment text variable as the initialization of this component, let me do that now. As you can see, we have hello displayed here, and this is one-way data binding. When you change this variable here, it'll be shown in the HTML. But let's say you want to do two-way data binding. This is one direction, showing the data that you have in your code in the HTML, and you want to get the data from the HTML into your code. If you can do that, this becomes a two-way data binding. Since we have a text area here, we can configure that as well. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a binding here. For that, I can add bind, and here I can specify the name of the variable, and that is going to be comment text, and I can specify the event of the binding, and that is on input, like this. Now if I save this, as you can see, we have hello inside of the preview of the comment as well as the text area. Now if I try to change this, as you can see, the two-way binding works. Alright, now I'm going to remove this initialization here. Let me do a few changes to this template. I don't like this gradient here. I'm going to main layout in the shared folder. Now if I collapse everything, let's focus on shared folder. In the main layout Razor file, we have a CSS file that contains the styles for this stuff. I don't like this linear gradient. I'm going to change this to a uniform color like this. And then the courses app, I'm going to change that as well, my channel name. Now if I go into the home page, we have courses. I want to change that as well. I'm going to pages and have courses. I'm going to add something like this. Alright, Now let me maximize this. Now let's go through what we have learned in this video. We learned about components and how to create them. We learned how to inject values into these components, and we saw how to get outputs from these components as well. Also, we saw how to create routes with components and two-way data binding as well. And finally, let's understand a little bit about component lifecycle. Now, if I go into the documentation here, we have a page containing information on component lifecycle. You can go through it if you want. I'm not going to cover everything in this video because that is really not necessary for you to get started. I will be going through this in a deeper way in a coming video, but let's understand the essentials of it. As you can see, we have two sections, first render only and after the first render. When a component gets initialized for the first time, these two lifecycle methods will be called. In this video, you saw I have used onInitialized method. OnInitialized and setParametersAsync will be called when the component gets initialized for the first time. When the parent re-renders, each time onParametersSet event will be called. As you can see here, the setParametersAsync method will be called before onInitialized. You can use this behavior to get access to the parameters that were set from the parent component before the component initializing. And after the initial render, this onParametersSet lifecycle method will be called. Now if I go back here, you can override all those methods typing this. As you can see, we have setParametersAsync and onInitialized, and we have a few other methods as well, such as shouldRender that returns a bool output. This tells the framework whether it should render the component again and again. And finally, we have onAfterRender method, and some of these has asynchronous overloads as well. Let me know down below if you want me to go into the component lifecycle more, and also let me know if you have any questions or comments as well. This is the second video of a series of videos that I'm going to do on Blazor. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe if you learned something new today, and thanks for watching.